My name is Bryan Gale. I run product marketing, field marketing globally for Cylance. And what I'm going to show you briefly before we go into kind of the hot seat session is really a very simple example of why we believe there's a new approach needed for solving the endpoint security problem in the world at large. Okay? And if I use one of the points that Christian talked about earlier in the day, and it was really about the need for change and change really being driven by panic or fear inside of an organization. And so Cylance was really founded by a lot of folks from really the traditional AV industry that got tired and frustrated of trying to change the industry from the inside, right? You've got too many incumbents that are resistant to change. They're resistant to trying new, innovative approaches. And the problem is they're fundamentally failing at protecting their customers. Now at Cylance, we come at it from a different perspective, a different approach. We do not use signatures. We don't use a DAT file. We don't require system scanning. Everything we do is based on machine learning and artificial intelligence. We use Amazon's cloud and a massive compute cluster to essentially train our machine learning models, and then we effectively miniaturize those down onto the endpoint in the form of a very, very lightweight client, right? Uses about 1% CPU, about 35 megs and so of memory. Yeah, not necessarily a lookup table per se, but AI in simplest terms is really, the concept of a machine showing or exhibiting human logical behavior in terms of being able to make decisions on its own, right? And that's really how AI is embodied in this security solution. You've got an agent on the endpoint that's months old, and it's effectively dealing with threats from today that we had no prior knowledge of 2-3 months ago, right? And so it's making that collective decision totally disconnected from the internet, right? We work great in an air-gapped environment. And so everything is self-contained within that endpoint agent, being able to make that determination as to whether something is malicious or not and should not be allowed to run.
So I've been in this industry quite a while, as have a large number of people in this audience, as I can tell from the greying hair.
Hair.
Yeah, same here. I've seen a lot of snake oil in that time. So you're talking about a system that is lightweight, that doesn't need an internet connection, that uses artificial intelligence, and still works better than any other system.
Sounds too good to be true.
It sounds too good to be true.
Yeah. So, honestly, our first comment to people is do not trust us, right? Treat us as just any other vendor, right? Test for yourselves within your own organization. Don't believe our claims at face value, right? Now, we happen to feel that we've got a better approach that works better than anything else that's out there to date, right? We are fundamentally the only solution in the endpoint space that's utilizing machine learning and artificial intelligence solely as the means of detection and protection on the endpoint itself. And so we absolutely urge customers or prospects to try it, test it on their own. We do a number of tours that we call the Unbelievable Tour. We do these across the world at this point, and we actually invite people to bring in USB sticks with live malware, right? If you think we're baking the test, bring in a USB stick with live malware samples that have gotten by your current protection technologies, and we'll test them live on stage. Yeah, it absolutely does. And I'd say the field of AI and the field of machine learning has broad applicability across so many different industry sectors, right? It's not just about defeating the next type of board game, right? The Go champion that got defeated by Google's AI machine. We just happen to have taken this and applied it to the endpoint security space, right? The core intellectual property that we develop is around machine learning, right? The data science team that we have. That data science team is not a group of scientists that have come from the security landscape, right? They are theoretical mathematicians, statisticians, and we apply that data science to the field of endpoint security, right? And there are so many other areas that are definitely applicable here in terms of the way we could take this technology into other adjacent security areas that we plan on doing in the future as well. So you say the competition, so I'm going to assume that you mean the attackers, not necessarily the security industry competition, right? So I think it's very plausible, right? The attackers are a very well-financed industry by themselves, right? They are after financial gain in most cases. Sometimes, obviously, it's nation-state attackers, but many of the attackers at large are really after financial gain. They have well-funded development teams, well-funded QA and research teams as well, and they are always looking at new ways to attack enterprise networks as well as consumer endpoints. So I think it's certainly in the realm of possibility. I don't know that we've seen that yet, but I have no reason to believe it won't happen. I don't know if I've got a great answer for how we are going to prevent, the chat box from turning evil, if you will, other than the way we train the mathematical models and the machine learning capabilities in the cloud. We test it for months up there. We typically will update our endpoint about every 6 months. And so during that 6-month period, there's new mathematical models that are put into there. There's new information that's tested against new threats that are tested against that. And we try and validate that in a very robust fashion over the course of months before we push or essentially miniaturize that down onto the endpoint itself. It's also the sense that the AI or the machine learning that we're using is very singularly focused in terms of preventing execution of malicious code on the endpoint. I'd say we're probably a few years away from that getting a little bit more broadly capable in terms of being able to make voice or other sort of determinations or capabilities. So it's through rigorous testing, I guess, and validation before it's pushed down to the endpoint is the best I can come up with it as of today. But